Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Thursday, the 20th of November, 2025, which makes this the news and events for Wednesday, the 19th of November, day 1365 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. How do you do? I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv, coming to you live from this major European capital, which is not under air raid alert right now. The Russians sent like 500 missiles and drones last night. And I don't think that we'll see an air raid alert here tonight because there's a bunch of military brass from the U.S. here, acting as our own personal air defense. The Russians will not want to mess that up, not with what they got coming, which we will talk about in just a minute here. I see the peeps are coming in. There's Nightshade. Hey, Steve McStevens. Hey, Chris. Hey, Andre. Who else is here? Hey, Chrissy Locks. Hey, Arna. Flying Sunshine Beams. Hey, Steve Kennedy. How you doing, buddy? Hey, Seawolf. How's our boy Nutmegger doing, huh? Hey, Nicola Jones. Hey, Den. I saw your text there. We are going to talk about that. It is very disturbing. Hey, Darlene. Hey, G2. Hey, Carl. Hey, Weebo. Yo, bro. Hey, J-Boy. Hey, Dan Borman. Hey, Jason Davis, Mike Connor, Mike Now. How you living, brother? How's everybody doing tonight? Hey, Pugga Mahone. How's life in Germany? Hey, Roy Daniels. Hey, Steve-O. Hey, Kath Brown. Bobby. Chernobyl was hit bad today. Really bad. Well, Chris, we'll talk about that in a minute. But let's start with last night's overnight missile and drone attacks. It was a big one. Kyiv was not so much the target last night. But I'll tell you, there is something very interesting to look at in the numbers here. You look at last night's missile and drone attacks, right? 41 out of 48 missiles shot down, 85.4% interception rate. Why? Why was it so good last night? Because virtually all of the missiles, were cruise missiles. So they fly low and slow, easier for the Ukrainians to intercept than those ballistic missile trajectories, especially the hypersonic missiles that just move so fast. Hey, Refurb. Then the other thing is where they targeted them. This is the other thing. Look at the drone interception rate, 442 out of 476 aerial targets eliminated. 93% interception rate. Why is it that some nights we see these like 0% interception rates and then these incredible interception rates? It's because when we see the low interception rates on missiles, it's because they're ballistic. And very commonly, they are hitting targets near the front line. Those S-400s, S-300s that come over the border from Kursk, they're in the air for 42 seconds. And then they're at the target. Very difficult to intercept. Same thing with the drones. When the drones are hitting frontline targets, and there's a shorter response time. That's why they had that big drone launch base they were trying to build in Donetsk, right, to shorten that time in the air. The interception rates drop. But when the targets are cities and civilians, where there's air defense for the major civilian populations, like in Chernobyl and in Kharkiv, and in Lviv, we see these great interception rates. I mean, these interception rates, 85% interception rate, that's like you're a god. You're an air defense god if you can get an 85% interception rate. So, I mean, it goes to show that if you give the Ukrainians the tools, and if you give them the ammunition, they're going to get through. They're going to do the job. That's all there is. Chris, we'll come to that. Hang on, give me a second. I want to talk about last night's missile and drone attacks first. Nightshade mentioned that, so last night was all civilian targets, guys. I mean, how anybody looks at this shit and doesn't understand what it is that the Russians are doing is beyond me. I don't know. So Ternopil was badly hit last night. 2 9-story apartment blocks were targeted with missiles. There's video online. You can see the missile coming in and it hits the apartment building and half the apartment building collapses. They are still pulling bodies out of the rubble. We do not have a final count. But all day long, I was watching the number of dead go from 10 to 15 to 20 to right now we stand at 26 dead in Ternopil alone. 3 of them are children under the age of 18. 73 people injured, among them 15 children. We're also getting reports. It's unclear. There are mixed reports of toxic chlorine levels in the air. One of those reports comes from Ternopil. The other one comes from Lviv. And it's unclear whether that's because we had this event happen in both places, which seems very unusual. In Lviv, they say that the source was a tire fire, that a tire warehouse caught fire, and that was responsible. But I'm not sure that chlorine is a byproduct of tire fires. I didn't have a chance to look it up. I'm not sure. We know that the Russians have been coating some of these incoming weapons, particularly cluster munitions, with toxic chemical agents like chloropicrin, CS gas, a primary component of which is chlorine. So where this chlorine is coming from is unclear, but one report suggested that in Ternopil, the toxic chlorine in the air spiked 600% over normal levels. In Kyiv, they were hit by a massive Geron 2 drone attack. Now, the Geron 2 is the Russian version of the Shahed, but it's got a jet engine. So it travels at 600 kilometers an hour, and 4 times the speed of a regular Shahed. Very hard to shoot down, especially so close to the front. The mayor reported no fatalities, but 46 injured, 2 of them children. Targets that were hit included 10 apartment buildings, right? Civilian businesses, shops, supermarkets, the Silpo. You've been in Silpo with me, some of you, when we go do our walking tours around town and do a little shopping. Silpo is a major supermarket chain here, and a gym, self-storage units, an ambulance substation, a school, dozens of cars, and several, 3 trolley buses were damaged. In Lviv, the regional military administration said that unspecified energy infrastructure, woodworking facilities, and warehouses were hit, but reported 0 casualties. Thank God. Explosions were reported in Dnipro, Mykolaiv, Odessa, Cherkasy, Chernihiv, and in Kyiv. So it was a bad night. It was definitely a bad night across the country. Zelensky's response in the wake of what he called this brazen attack against ordinary life, which is exactly what it is, right? The Russians know that they have been defeated on the battlefield, that they cannot win there. They just can't. And they're losing every day. So what do? They are attempting to terrorize the civilian population into capitulation. And they're getting help from the President of the United States, which breaks my heart in ways that you cannot imagine. So Zelensky called it a brazen attack against ordinary life and stressed the country's needs in the face of Russian aggression. Our, quote, primary need is missiles for air defense, additional air defense systems, strengthened combat aviation, and expanded drone production to protect lives. That's what Zelensky and the Ukrainian people need right now. Following drone strikes on critical energy infrastructure in Donetsk, long lines formed at the border crossing to Russia. Now, right off the bat, everybody should be thinking to themselves, wait a minute. I thought the Russians annexed the temporarily occupied territories. Isn't Donetsk officially Russia? Yes, it is, right? According to the Russian press and Russian law and the Russian Constitution. Why then is there a border crossing? Why then at this border crossing are the border guards letting Russians escape back to Russia, but are not permitting long-term residents of Donbass to leave? They're not letting them leave. There is a flight happening as energy infrastructure is being hit in Donetsk. Donetsk city already doesn't have water because of the absolute incompetence of the occupation administration. So in this world where the occupation administration is incompetent and cannot even provide water, now that the Ukrainians are turning out the lights, Russian citizenry that came there to make a buck, to exploit the opportunity that war presented, to exploit the Ukrainians, to steal their property, to teach in the schools because they're on a mission from God. Whatever their reason is, the Russians are fleeing now. And there are kilometer-long backups of Russians fleeing back to mainland Russia. Let's call it mainland Russia. As life in the temporarily occupied territories consistently degrades, the civilian population that came from Russia to profit or exploit are fleeing back to Russia. All their aspirations crushed under the righteous wrath of the Ukrainians. Now, the big thing, of course, that Chris and Dan and everybody wants to get to is what the fuck is Krasnov up to now? Hey, Kennedy. My voice is a little scratchy. Okay. This is what we understand at this time, as confirmed by Axios, Reuters, and some others. For a couple weeks now, the Trump administration has been back-channeling with the Russians to come up with what they're calling a 28-point peace plan for Ukraine. Now, the lead negotiator for the Russians is a guy named Kirill Dmitriev. He runs the Sovereign Wealth Fund for the Russian Federation. So clearly, if he's in charge of the money, he's a good, close, personal friend of Trump's. Or, I'm sorry, of Putin's. I get the two mixed up. They're so easy to mix up. He's a good friend of Putin's. Steve Witkoff, whose family is Russian, who has said the most stupid, asinine things, ignorant things about Ukraine, and is very clearly a lapdog to the Putin regime and the Trump campaign, was the chief negotiator for the Trump White House. Dmitriev very menacingly said that this is the first plan we feel the Russian position is really being heard. I'm sorry, the Russian position, that somehow Russia has a claim on Ukraine, that the Ukrainians aren't a sovereign people unto themselves, but they are just little Russians. Ugh. So look, any plan, and now the whole plan, there's a bunch of military brass here. And I was unable to find out who the team is that's here. I don't know if they're hand-picked Trump loyalists, you know, like, who's that guy I hate? Flynn, General Flynn. I don't know if they're Trump loyalists like that, or if they're seasoned Pentagon four-star generals. It's supposed to be a couple of four-star generals. They're supposed to be here to present the Trump-Putin ultimatum peace plan, to Zelensky tomorrow. And the plan will be unveiled after the meeting with Zelensky. I'm sure they are, Monty. I mean, that's who he's going to send. And that means that what's going to happen in that room is a crime and a sin and a stain on the American soul that we will not soon clean. Because these guys are going to try to strong-arm Zelensky into accepting this plan. And I'll tell you right now, any plan that hears the Russian position is no plan that the Ukrainians are going to take. So we'll see. I don't think it's a distraction. Right, the plan includes recognizing Crimea as Russian, then no, it's a no-go. If that's true, Nightshade. I mean, I don't know that anybody has seen the plan but Witkoff, Dmitriev, and their teams. So, I don't know. It is almost certainly a huge waste of time. As far as whether or not Putin and Trump believe that they might be able to get it through, they very well may believe that. Because they believe the narrative that Russia is winning on the battlefield. In fact, it was Dmitriev. Dmitriev said, in light of our recent battlefield advances. Ooh, battlefield advances, huh? You mean Pokrovsk, right? Now look, oh my God, I just found this out right before the live came on. Wait till you hear this. Everybody saw that video of the Russians in the fog marching into Pokrovsk, right? They thought that they were doing something clever. Under the cover of fog, the Mad Max brigade from the Russian Federation poured into Pokrovsk, right? On motorcycles and civilian cars and Mad Max cars, crazy shit. And on foot, a lot of them on foot. And some asshole videotapes how clever they're being, coming in under the cover of fog, and posts it online. The path is immediately geolocated by Ukrainian drone operators and swarmed with drones. As many as 200 Russian soldiers were eliminated because of that video. Because of that video. I mean, it's really something. The Russians are really something, man. So these big battlefield advances, 14 months to take a town of 60,000 before the war. All right. So it's my opinion that nobody is going to accept this peace deal, but that we are going to embarrass ourselves with a couple of Trump loyalists trying to strong-arm Zelensky tomorrow, telling him, look, You don't have money. Without us, you don't have weapons. You gotta give up. You gotta give in to the Russian demands. You gotta go along with what's happening to you. Bend over and let Putin fuck you up the ass. That's what we're telling you, son. You gotta do. I don't know what the 28-point peace plan is, but I believe that any peace plan that hears the Russian position is doomed to failure. Because the Russians don't have a position. They don't have a claim here. They are the aggressor, and they must be defeated. They cannot be rewarded for this behavior. They can't be. If that happens, we're all going to be in a lot of trouble. So meanwhile, right, while Putin and Trump are jerking each other off with this bullshit peace plan that they, in their narcissistic bubbles, think they can shove down the throats of the Ukrainians, Zelensky is out there doing the hard work. He had quite a tour this week. He was in Greece. We saw the plan to sell U.S. liquefied natural gas to Ukraine through the Greeks' Trans-Balkan pipeline. Then he was in Paris, and we heard about the 100 Rafale jets that Ukraine is aspiring to purchase, along with 8 SAMP-T systems, air defense systems that France is going to provide. So Zelensky is actually getting real shit done in a whirlwind tour that has taken him to Paris, Athens, Madrid, Istanbul, and back to Kyiv for a meeting with those U.S. military brass tomorrow to have this peace plan presented to him. He's out there busting his ass, forging international relations on behalf of the Ukrainian people. In Spain yesterday, we saw 5 bilateral memorandum of understanding signed to combat Russian disinformation, cooperate on tourism, technical and financial cooperation, as well as agriculture cooperation. In meetings with parliamentarians, Zelensky also discussed Russian attacks on energy infrastructure, civilians, and housing, as well as the need to strengthen air defense. For their part, the Spanish pledged 1 billion euros to the Pearl Initiative. The Pearl Initiative, the prioritized Ukraine requirements list. That's the list of weapons that they can purchase from the U.S., right? The Pearl Initiative. So 1 billion euros coming from Spain. I was hoping that we would have an update on the meeting between Erdogan and Zelensky in Istanbul today, but I did not see one before the live. So tomorrow we'll talk about what happened in Istanbul, and maybe we'll have some sense of what the Ukrainian response to the 28-point plan for surrender is. And I hope it's just that dismissive. Did anybody see Paul Love come in? Is Paul Love here? Paul's the sponsor of tonight's live. I want to thank him. If anybody sees Paul, give him a thank you. How about Kurian? Is Kurian here? He's going to be our live sponsor tomorrow night. But Kurian, if you're here, I can't message you back on PayPal. Your security settings prohibit it. So thanks. You're up for tomorrow night. Now, our man in Moscow, Steve Rosenberg, is back with the Russian papers, reading them so we don't have to. And today, Steve tells us that almost every day the Russian papers write about the country's economic woes. It doesn't mean that he goes on to say that it doesn't mean that the country is on the verge of collapse. It doesn't mean that Putin is going to stop the war. But he quite rightly points out that these economic pressures are real and will have consequences. And the pressure is increasing from them. In Arguments and Facts today, there was a report that loan rejection rates are up as high as 82%. So 1 out of 5 people that apply, less than 1 out of 5 people that apply for a loan in Russia right now are getting it. Nezavismaya Gazetia reports that Russian industry is somewhere between stagnation and decline, is the headline. Quote, the fall in investment activity will soon hit a new record. In domestic industry, investment is falling, and production in the sector as a whole is somewhere between stagnation and decline, independent economists quoted in Nezavisima Gazetia. The Russian Ministry of Trade officially recognizes that some sectors of the industry are in recession already. There's Paul Love. Thanks, Paul. In Moskovsky Komsomolsk, Parliament is discussing amendments to the 2026 budgets. Trump sanctions have now pushed oil to below $40 a barrel, with little hope of a speedy recovery. Do you know what the crisis point for the Russian central bank for oil is? It's $35. If oil falls to and stays at $35 a barrel, Russia is fucked. Fucked. With a capital F. The 2026 budget was based on $59 a barrel oil. $59 a barrel. Right now, that's a difference of 22.40, about 22.39. That's 2/5, right? No, what is it? It's something like that. It's close to 2/5, something like that. Oh my God. The Moskovsky Komsomolsk goes on to write, if the average price of Russian oil is fixed at this level, the consequences for the economy and the budget will be catastrophic. Now look, I'm not saying that just because a state-controlled media says that the Russians are going bankrupt, that it's true, right? These people never print the truth. So if they're saying these things, it must be super bad. Super bad. And they are clearly preparing the public for near-term economic disaster. And you know my opinion is that we will see it before January 15th or by January 15th, maybe February 1st, but I'm betting January 15th. That's my firm belief. Okay. So guys, I want to thank Paul Love, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. Thank you, Paul. I want to thank Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group, and of course, the moderator team, the best moderators on the Tickety Talk. You got Maddie, Feisty, Travis, and Roy. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. Hi, Tina. How you doing? So, Clinkers Kelly, it's my opinion that the perfect storm of economic devastation is about to hit Russia. Now, look, I'm an idiot who's wrong about things all the time, right? Just ask my ex-wife. She'll be happy to tell you. But you follow the money, and things are not looking good for Russia. And I believe, right, that the Russians know that it's coming. That's why they passed that law that gave the FSB the right to have unlimited pre-trial detention facilities. If you think you're headed towards social unrest, where you're going to have to do mass arrests, you're going to have to silence dissent, you're going to have to disappear people, what you need is for your secret police to have an extrajudicial, completely independent pre-trial detention facility. You can read torture chamber there because that's what's going to go on there. You can be sure. And that officially goes into effect January 1st. Then you have the question of the December budget reconciliations. The Russians have a habit of hiding all the year's losses until January or until December when they can't hide them anymore. Then all of a sudden, you go from having, like Gazprom did last year, to having a $7 billion profit margin in September to losing $8 billion in December. Right? That's why that happens every year, or every year since the war started anyway. Oh, yeah. Ukraine's facing economic headwinds, too. This war has destroyed about 46% of the GDP of this country. It's a real problem. It's a real problem. So we're in this test of wills. Who can survive? Now, here's the thing. Russia's overheated wartime economy is contracting. Ukraine seems to be expanding, thanks to foreign investments. It is not men that win wars. It is alliances. And Ukraine has the alliances. Just you can see this week where Zelensky was and what he got accomplished. Who wants to talk to Russia? Nobody but a handful of pariah states and one pariah president. That's who. That president is a problem, though. Boy, is he a problem. Nobody can trust Russia, Drew. The Russians don't trust each other. Look at what Putin did to his biggest cheerleaders this week. That kid, what's that kid's name? Roman Altinikov, something like that. Roman. So Roman is on the telegram there, fierce pro-Russian nationalist, waving the flag every day to 151,000 followers. Putin just branded him a foreign agent and locked him up. The rats are eating themselves as the situation deteriorates. Clive, anybody with friends is in a better situation than people with no friends. I don't know about the British spy that was arrested. I'm not sure what that's about. Courtney, exactly. No honor among thieves. These guys are literally slicing each other's throats, literally throwing each other out the window. Literally. For an ever-shrinking piece of a pie. Could Trump tariff anyone not supporting his big, beautiful capitulation of Ukraine? That's a great question, Dan. Right now, Trump believes that he can do anything, right? If the courts don't rein him in on these tariffs soon, which I am hoping that we're waiting for a decision from the Supreme Court right now, which you will notice he has pulled a lot of tariffs off things, like reasonable things you don't want to tariff, bananas. We're never going to grow bananas in the United States. Coffee, chocolate, beef, pork, right? Some of this stuff we are never going to grow in the United States, and some of it we can't grow enough of. What kills me is that the maggots seem to be able to understand that taking tariffs off reduces prices, but they don't seem to be able to grasp that putting them on raises them. That decision isn't due until June? Ugh. They might force him to give it all back. That'd be great. Told the truth in Odessa for RT. What? There's no truth on RT. Near Midnight Post, he said he invested $3 trillion budget. Remainder in tariffs? What? I mean, that doesn't even make any sense. He did not take in $3 trillion in tariffs. And even if he did, that would just be a tax on the American people. Yeah, I know, Mike Kelly. I know, it's very difficult. I don't know what we're going to do. Numbers with Trump are always BS. Yeah, there's a way to refund the tariffs. Yeah, it can be done. You just have to do it. Yeah, I like that, Drew. That's a real that's really great, right? Because the courts are telling the Texans they have to use the ungerrymandered maps. Yeah, Mr. Local. I mean, come on, we do it with taxes every year. So whatchamacallit, they can't use the gerrymandered maps in Texas, right? But in California, the governor called for a proposition for the people to vote on for an interim map change. That made their maps legal. So, I mean, look, I'm not a fan of this gerrymandering bullshit, especially not when it's used specifically to make sure that the votes of certain people don't count. But in this case, I'm okay with it. Jack Black, why aren't the American left on the streets every day? Because there is no American left. Our politics have drifted so far right that if you're a Reagan conservative, you're considered center these days in the United States. So we don't have a left. California did little more than a legal vote for winner-take-all electoral college. Yeah, I honestly, TK's daddy, I don't know the details. But Newsom seems to be doing the right thing. You got to stand up to this fucker. Tax the rich. I'm with you, Drew. Tax billionaires out of existence, as far as I'm concerned. I'm all right with that. Yeah, CyberDoc, I don't know what it is, but there's a federal statute that if religious organizations get involved in politics, they lose their tax-exempt status. I don't understand why that isn't being enforced. We need to make that enforced. We do that, you neuter the whole evangelical movement. And that's what needs to happen. We're up to 800 billionaires. Ugh. Right, exactly, Lola. And if the church doesn't stay separated, they should be taxed. Maria, they can sell shares. We used to have a tax code in this country where if you made more than $5 million a year, every penny over $5 million, or every dollar over 5 million was taxed at 90%. And so that gave you an upper limit, basically, and the minimum wage gave you a bottom limit. The inequalities could only be so disparate. That's gone. That's what gave us a healthy middle class. That's what gave us highways and nuclear plants, nuclear bombs, the internet. And now it's all gone because we don't have that progressive tax anymore. And the minimum wage is not a living wage. So it's ridiculous. We got to get, and there's good reason for it, right? You look at Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos made Amazon. He makes a lot of money. Good for him. If his people can't take bathroom breaks because to make his billions, he has to keep them working like cogs in a machine instead of like people, no, it's not acceptable. Everybody that works at Amazon ought to be able to have a decent life, ought to be able to unionize. And we should tax the shit out of Jeff Bezos. You know why? Because, yeah, he made Amazon. Good move, pal, right? You deserve to make a lot of money. You don't deserve to make all the money because you couldn't do it without the taxpayer-funded internet. The American taxpayer gave the world the internet. And now you come along with your great model and you make something that we all love and use. Now we're going to tax the shit out of you because you also killed Main Street. Well, really, that was the big box stores, but let's, for the purposes of this analogy, let's assume that that's true. So we tax the shit out of you, and then we invest that where? In Main Street. That's how it's supposed to work. This winner-take-all mentality. These people that make their fortunes on this system and then don't want to pay into this system, fuck them. That's it, Lola. They'll never be satisfied. Oh, Debbie, if that's true, that's a sin. Debbie is saying that the big ugly bill allowed churches to engage in political speech and not lose their tax exemption. I'm not aware of that. If that's true, that is a real blow to American democracy and to the fundamental tenet of the separation of church and state. Hey, Birdie. Oh, pardon me. That's what it is. It's Project 2025. Oh, you retired from the IRS. Right on. Well, then you would certainly know. Kellogg is stepping down too. Kellogg. Keith Kellogg? Keith Kellogg. Oh, General Keith Kellogg. Is he really? I bet it's because he objected to this 28-point bullshit. New York energy firms are owned by Spanish firms. Make that make sense. Because that's the world we live in today. Questions, comments? That's a shame. He was a decent person. He is a decent person. All right, again, I want to thank Paul Love, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. I want to thank Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, that has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces, and of course the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk, Feisty, Maddie, Travis, and Roy. You might be right about that, Den. Guys, my voice is really, it's going. So if nobody has any other questions or comments, I think I'm going to call it a night. Is that okay with you, Paul? Is that okay with everybody? Yeah, I'm drinking this. I put honey in it too, and it doesn't seem to be, you know, how honey helps. Thanks, Bertie. Thanks, Mike Now. Hey, Ted. Good night, pal. Night, Drew. Night, Lola. See you, laddie. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Lars. Thanks, Den. Thanks, Violet. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you very much. Night, Dan. Night, Sammy. Thanks, Chrissy. Thanks, Courtney. Thanks, Victoria. Night, Scotty. Yeah, let's call it a night, Paul boy. All right, good night, Clive. Good night, everybody. Make it a great day and have a pleasant tomorrow. Take care.